Hey, friends. Welcome to the United States of America podcast. I am your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here on North Carolina. We welcome you to make yourself comfortable as we go over the current state of the world and our nation. If you have missed past episodes, please be sure to take the time to at least watch the first episode to have a proper introduction to our conversations. These conversations are not otherwise happening in any sequential order. Please be aware that we expect you to behave with honor in our comment section and that we are a people at peace. We have declared peace to all nations around the world. This is not a marketing or sales podcast, and we are not sovereign citizens. Sovereign citizen is an oxymoron. And if you say that you're a sovereign citizen, you are a moron. A sovereign is a free and honorable living man or woman who operates under God's law or natural law and who honors themselves and others in peace. One definition for the word citizen is slave, but there are different kinds of citizens. Putting those two words together is an oxymoron. We also do not promote or condone TikTok videos or Facebook or any other social media games to test the system or to impose your beliefs onto society at large. This is not a marketing and promotional channel. We are not selling anything here. We are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you. And we are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We are interested in helping you reclaim your birthright and your inheritance. We are not sitting in judgment of you. This information is a beacon of light for you to use when you choose to seek it. We have marshals at arms that are designated as moderators in the comment section below, and they're assisting. They can answer questions for you. If they answer one of your questions, then you should believe that it is true. These people are educated and they are knowledgeable about the answers that they're giving you. Please be kind with your words. If you diminish others, you will be put in a timeout or deleted and blocked as deemed necessary. If you have any questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. I am joined on air with our North Carolina Marshal at Arms, Cynthia Pinkston, and now I am proud to introduce to you Justice Anna Maria from Big Lake, Alaska. Welcome, Anna.
Good morning, everybody.
How's everybody doing? We're ready?
We're ready. Go.
Let's go. Let's go. We're so ready, Anna, today. I wanted to ask you something. This has been kind of gnawing at me a little bit over here. You know, we are all new. We're all new at this, right? All the assemblies are brand new. And I know that we on the assemblies, the General Assembly will be setting the term limits for each of the elected positions. But with all the assemblies that are just starting, like, would it make any sense because we are just learning our positions, because there's nobody who is in that position who has been doing it already? You know, would it make sense for the first term to be kind of extended as the assemblies are learning? Because if that person is figuring things out, it would take some time, you know, to really get good at it. And I don't know that anybody can do that in a year.
There's no set rule as for how long you elect your officials within the assembly.
I guess I'm thinking about, for example, any of the pillar leaders or spokespeople, any of our speakers. I feel like, you know, I guess it's traditional that it would be like a 1 year or 2 year term or something like that.
No, not necessarily. There's not a hard and fast rule about that. The states make up their own rules as in terms of how long their assembly speakers serve. A 4-year term would not be unusual. The question came up about the recording secretaries. Some states make recording secretary positions more or less permanent for life.
Mm-hmm.
States have a 2-year renewal. You know, every 2 years they review and talk to the people and make sure they still want to be recording secretaries, or, you know. So it just varies quite a bit across the spectrum of the states. But it's your state, and you get to set the terms of office of your elected and appointed officials.
Huh. I guess I had read something somewhere that you had written, and I read so much I can't remember what it was now. But I feel like I read somewhere that you had said that, 1 to 2 years was recommended. But that's good to know, because I was just thinking about, first of all, does the term, like, we probably don't want it to start until we're actually seated, because it takes so much time to just learn to just even get seated.
Well, it's kind of a toss up. There are advantages to holding elections. It gives you practice holding elections. That's a big plus, because that's a process in and of itself. Okay, so if you go through the process of electing pro tem a speaker and justices and all of that, you're up and you're already through that phase, and so there's something to be said for that. Um, it's just that we're in a rather unique position here because, as you say, we are starting from a full dead stop to, getting back into session and being able to pull this off in an organized fashion. It would take maybe 3 weeks for a state to come into full session back when they were doing this regularly, right? Because everybody knew what they were doing, and they knew what roles they were and what the offices had to do, and the circuit riders, also known as coordinators, they had a set route, and they had printers that they worked with, and they knew where they were going to meet, and wham bam, thank you ma'am, and there they are, right? All that stuff had been worked out, and they could just basically, okay, well, we're coming into session. We'll meet on April 19th, and we'll meet here at this particular location, and but now we're having to start at scratch. Everybody has to learn their part, and everybody has to get organized, and so it's taking like 3 years instead of 3 months.
Yeah.
Let me ask a follow-up question. Let's say the coordinator appoints a spokesperson. They were appointed by the coordinator, and due to circumstances, can the coordinator remove that person if they were appointed, if there are circumstances that come up?
Well, a coordinator shouldn't be appointing a speaker. A speaker of the assembly, or chairman of the assembly, is what it's also called. It should be elected position, and that's just because. Well, it'd be like me coming in and saying, okay, well, you Cynthia are going to be the speaker for the assembly.
What about a spokesperson? Just a spokesperson, not an.
That's what an assembly chairman is.
Okay.
An assembly chairman is the spokesperson for the assembly, and they are supposed to be speaking for the majority of the people in their assembly whenever they're in an official capacity. They're supposed to be reflecting the views and the needs and the opinions of the people in their assembly, instead of even doing their own take on something. They're supposed to be speaking for the assembly, literally as a spokesperson who is there doing the will of the assembly, not doing their own will in particular, but actually serving to bring forward the views that have been expressed to them by votes and by feedback from the assembly membership itself.
And even a committee. Let's say some of these, the General Assembly has many committees. The business has committees. This one has committees.
Yeah.
Even a committee. Same rule?
Certain positions are elected and certain positions are appointed. If you have a committee chairmanship that's open, and you're looking for volunteers, and you find a volunteer, sure, boom, there you go. There's an assembly chairmanship. that kind of thing is very fluid. Some committees are standing committees that you're always going to have. You're always going to have a vetting committee. You're always going to have an elections committee. You're always going to have a sessions committee, which, God help them, will be the ones responsible for bringing you back into session if you go out of session. Um, so, there are certain standing committees that are always going to be there. But there are a lot of other committees that are kind of topical. They're going to research a particular question, or they're going to look into a specific uh, possible program that they might want to participate in, or they're just going to be present for a relatively short period of time. For example, as we move on down the road here, there will be a time when we have a Congress, and there's going to have to be a selection and election process of, who are the delegates going to be to go to that Congress, and training them up so that they know what to expect before they get there. And you'll probably have a whole committee that's just dealing with that one issue. But once you get the wheels rolling and you got everything oiled up and everybody knows how it works, well, then the committee will probably just fade into the background, and you'll from then on just be electing your delegates.
So would that person that maybe was in this spokesperson, just someone who speaks for it, would that come back to the General Assembly for a vote to be removed?
Well, it's not so much being removed. It would be a matter of holding a new election.
There you go. I yield.
May I? So along those same lines, I think that what Cynthia might be thinking about is as we're building our assemblies, because right now things are different. We don't mean like generally speaking down the line 5-10 years, more like right now there's a lot of misunderstandings going on. There's a lot of like Anna, we have talked about this, that look, people are coming in to the assemblies because nobody in America has ever been able to be involved, and they're listening to us. I mean, I know you're making that face because they have been able to be involved, but they don't know how to be involved, and that's a different problem. But this education piece that we're bringing, so when we're talking to people and we're educating them about, hello, we are the government, not the corporatocracy. We are the government, not the corporatocracy, and kind of, distinguishing the differences. Well, as folks are jumping in, then what we're finding out is, like you said, it might take some time for us to recognize, hey, this is a reformer, not a restorer, or this person belongs, with the church, or this person belongs with the Brits, but like it's not someone who belongs in this assembly. And so if any of our assembly people who have stepped up to speak and the coordinator recognizes, oh, maybe this person isn't necessarily for our assembly, but they would probably fit better in one of these other assemblies, and a lot of those people don't even know either that they should choose another option. Also, a lot of them are here because, and once they get in, they want their vendor card, they want their prosperity card, or whatever it is. And then that has nothing to do with making our assembly great, making our court stand up. Do you see this friction, this kind of confusion that's happening? Because it's not that they may or may not have malicious intent. We don't know. But mostly I think everybody's confused. And then when you ask them, hey, what do you want, brother? Because we operate in this draconian land law, and you're acting like in this other realm. And we just need you to, like, what do you want? Right? So if we figure out that person doesn't want this.
Well, let me give you a couple of real good examples that we've already gone through. We had a guy, let's just call him Kenneth, okay? Kenneth came into one of the assemblies, and he was clearly expecting something different. He was a very staunch Catholic. and he wanted to have like prayer and religious training as like committee, or and have an invocation and prayer before every meeting, and all this stuff that was very religious. And so we got to talking to him, and we explained, well, our government, our tradition, our custom is that there's a separation between church and state. Now, of course, that's not the case with the municipal theocracy that runs Washington, D.C. That has always been a theocracy, and it still is. And they are very religious, and they're very attuned to having prayer before the meeting, and having religious discussions about various issues. So he was obviously looking for the municipal government, not us, but the theocracy, right? And so we sat down with him, and we tried to explain this. And then he got all angry, and he thought that we had stolen his birth certificate bond. He thought that the birth certificate bond was something that had value for him. And we had a hard time explaining to him that, no, this was a bond that was placed upon your labor. Okay, this was a bond in the sense of bondage that was placed on your labor that you were supposed to earn back and pay back to the Pope. Okay, and then he didn't want to believe that, and we had to lay out the entire scheme of how King Henry VIII and the Pope divvied things up, and how they operated basically a peonage racket over the course of a man's lifetime. Well, that was very hard for him to take, because he's a staunch Catholic, and the idea that the Pope had indulged in this kind of peonage scheme was shocking. Well, so one thing led to the other. First, it was the religious separation of church and state, and then it was, oh no, the Pope wouldn't do that. You're lying. You're stealing from me. You're doing something here nefarious. It shouldn't be this way. Well, we agree that there shouldn't be peonage involved in anybody's life, whether they're Catholic or not. But that's neither here nor there. When you sign up as a Catholic, this is what happens. And we had to actually, go through this entire process with him to expose why we don't have his birth certificate bond, and why we didn't create the birth certificate bond, and we don't come in and lay claim to his labor resources, and at the end of it, it was a huge effort just to get this one man squared away and get him into the municipal district assembly. We finally did it. We finally did manage it, but it took quite a bit of effort on the part of that assembly to just deal with him and calm him down and get him into his right government, his right position, right?
I think a lot of people find it very frustrating, Anna, because they're like, wait a minute, I'm trying to get out of this bondage, but I'm also a staunch Catholic. So, in the same way that could be that way for anyone who is very much tied to the crown. And listen, this is something that's interesting too. Like, I've had someone recently ask me, Anna, they're like, wait a minute now, who decided this? Who gets to be the land and the air and the water? Like, who made the Pope in charge of the air? And how did he get to be in charge of all of this and control it? Like, where did that come from? And I think this lady, Anna, she just hates the Pope. That's obviously what you're telling me. And I was like, no.
We can argue with the situation all we like, but the situation is what it is, as the old Roman saying goes. And you have to kind of play the cards as they're dealt, right? You have to deal with what is before you can build what you want it to be, right?
Right.
And so essentially the separation of air, land, and sea, and the further separation of the different, like soil is actually a result of land, right?
Right.
So then there are subdivisions. All that came from the Romans
Oh,
originally.
the Romans came up with all of this, and it's so ancient. You were trying to explain this to me. Me and you were talking about the post office because that was a whole different thing. And I have all these people asking me these weirdo things, and then I'm like, I guess that I should know where the resource is for me to point them to the answer. But it was like you said, this is so ancient, and it goes back so far.
Well, the Romans are the ones, and they defined all this under their civil law. And the Romans, you have to understand that the Romans were kind of scavengers. They would take ideas from other cultures that they encountered in their conquests, and they would adopt those ideas to their own use. So if you go back, there aren't that many things that were uniquely Roman about the Roman Empire, but they were great. They were great at taking an idea someone else had and adapting it to their use. And they were great at organization. I mean, they were, extremely good at being able to organize things in a logical manner and make them work like a machine, right? So the system of air, land, and sea comes from the Romans. And then they're also the ones that developed the idea of the soil, the top 6 inches of the soil being separate from the land beneath it. And it just comes from looking at the fact, some of this comes from the Bible actually too. But it was further adopted by the Romans, and it was refined and defined by the Romans. And so what they're looking at is just a very practical view of, okay, well, I'm a man, and where do I live? Well, we don't live underground. We live on the soil, right? We live on the surface of the earth, right?
Right.
And we live in the air. So our being, throughout our lives, is here where these air-breathing creatures that are moving about on the soil. We don't live in the land, which is underneath the soil. The dead are buried, right? The dead live in the land. You see, and so it's very practical. The soil is separated from the land underneath it, and the land of the living, right? The soil is where we live, and then underneath that, it's all dead. It's minerals, it's oil deposits, it's the realm of the dead. So that they had a very practical way of looking at this, and it was the same when it came to maritime and admiralty law. They made a distinction between maritime law, which they visualized as the ports and the coastal commerce that goes on along the coasts. That's maritime, right? And then admiralty is what goes on in the deep sea, the high seas. And so they made these very practical distinctions between different areas, different geographical areas. And so, there are the coastal waters versus the high seas. There's the maritime commerce versus land commerce, right?
Yeah.
And it's very, very simple and practical. And it follows along with what you can directly observe,
Yeah, it's very smart. And so they were the ones who came up with this jurisdiction, and then it has just been adopted by all the civilizations going forward. That's what you're saying.
Where does the Pope live?
All roads lead to Rome. All roads lead to Rome. Yeah, yeah. No, well, I listen, when I'm talking to folks about this, they're just thinking, it's interesting what they come back with. And they're like, well, I don't believe you that they're doing that. And where is the evidence for that? And who made up this stuff? Because no one actually is talking about it. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess that, but you know what? The good news is we can just say, hey, all roads lead to Rome. Why don't you start studying ancient Rome? And probably that's where they're going to find it. So
Well,
that's
the Roman civil law is where this stuff mainly got hacked out, right?
Roman civil law, friends. Hey, Anna, they need direction. When they're telling us this, when they're saying this to us, they just need direction.
Well, and as far as the Pope being, setting up the Unum Sanctum Trust, that's something you can just look up for yourself. That's part of history. You can read the entire thing online. It's been translated from Latin. And you can read exactly what he said, how he said it, and when he said it. You can, if you have some expertise in legalese, you can recognize what he's basically talking about. And essentially, when he was setting up the Unum Sanctum Trust, he took, by declaration, he declared himself the steward of the entire world, basically. And then the separation of things into air, land, and sea, which is, by the way, something that it's common enough. You can just look up air, land, and sea, and they'll plug it into your browser. This is a concept that has been used to organize everything from military forces to cadastral surveys to the all sorts of things have been organized. Governments have been organized, courts have been organized, military forces have been organized according to air, land, and sea, because that's what nature gives us.
I love it. I love when you explain things and make it so plain, because there's a lot of chaos and confusion about it.
Well, there shouldn't be. People step back and just take a look at their world. They can see that there's air, there's land, and there's sea.
I think you're trying to make it a little too easy, Anna. That's the problem. They're used to so much convolution. The convolution, the illusions, the lies, the immorality, it is running rampant. And so when you make these simple statements, everybody's like, no way. No way.
Well, they can see for themselves that there is a particular law that attaches to the sea. It's called admiralty law. There is a particular law that attaches to the land. They've all heard that the Constitution is the law of the land. Okay, why they should have any doubt that this is the way it is, I don't know. But they're welcome to have their doubts and to go cut their teeth on researching these things and look it up for themselves. I've had some very, very bright people come to me, lawyers, doctors, professors from universities, and their initial response has been, oh, you must be full of what, because how could this possibly be and we not know about it, right? Well, I said, maybe you just never thought about it.
No.
And in all cases it turns out, well, yeah, actually we hadn't thought about it. Okay, well, go research it. go see what you find out. And they come back to me. They'll take off and they'll be gone 3 months, 6 months, a year, and then they'll come back to me and they'll say, you were right. And it's it's this sort of slack-jawed, you were right.
Oh my gosh. All the Paris treaties were all water treaties. Oh, all the Versailles treaties were all land treaties. Wow, that's weird. How did this happen? Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was figuring it out and I thought, that's weird. How did no one taught this stuff? This is crazy.
Well, you'd be amazed. Right now we're going through retraining for lawyers, bar attorneys, and they've all gone through law school, right? They're supposed to be juris doctors. They're supposed to have a doctoral degree in law.
And they have no idea about jurisdiction, do they?
They don't know what a bar attorney is. They don't know. They don't know.
I made a post about that, Anna. I showed it to you and I posted it. I can't tell you all the crazy people that responded to me about that. They were just like, you don't know what you're talking about. American Bar Association, ABA, they said. I go, right, but I was defining bar. I was defining the bar with American Bar Association, but I was defining bar. So,
Right.
you guys should pay attention to that aspect of it. And it is all British Admiralty. Like, pay attention to the Brits. They were saying, no, we're American. It says American bar.
Right, but you can have the East Indian bar, you can have the British bar, you can have the French bar, you can have the Chilean bar, there are bar associations in every country in the planet. And what you're talking about is basically the law of the sea.
Right.
And if you look at it, the actual definitions and stuff that are applied. Now, bar association activities, bar attorneys, that position has existed forever, but it was defined and it was made official by the Naval Agency and Distribution Act, which assigned a bar attorney to every ship of war. And they were called agents. They were not called bar attorneys. They were called agents. But the bar attorneys, as it makes clear, are agents. And that's why we also then have the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And a bar attorney is by definition a foreign agent because they're coming from a foreign jurisdiction. Okay, so they're all supposed to be registered under the Foreign Agent Act, the FARA, Foreign Agent Registration Act. But most of them kind of bridle up and they say, well, wait a minute, I'm not foreign. How am I foreign in my own country? See, they don't even understand the most basic rudimentary aspects of what they're doing as being opposed to land law, and that they're in a different jurisdiction than the rest of us. And, when I start laying this out for them, and I'm writing a book, it's called Law Retraining. And it's, they know nothing about our courts. They know nothing about our operations and our law. Sure, they've heard about the law of the land, but they don't think it applies anymore, see, because so few of us have retained our natural birthright political status, at least on paper, that they think that doesn't matter anymore because, it's been bypassed somehow. And I ask them just, they don't even understand what their own job is. They don't understand that the job assigned by the Naval Agency and Distributions Act was for them to assist in the capture of enemy vessels and to distribute the prize and booty money, the payola coming off of this, because the British Navy has always operated largely on prizes at sea and booty on the land. And so when the British Navy has been at war on their war ships, right, they would, as of 1864, an attorney was assigned to the ship. Each warship had at least one agent, and that agent was a bar attorney.
Wow.
And so their job is literally to change the ownership and jurisdiction of material things and direct, the distribution of prizes and booty. And that's what they've been doing. And they have no idea. They have no freaking idea that that's what their job is. And that's what they've been doing. And that's what bar attorney means. And so I take them through that. I show them the various meanings of the bar. There are like 6 different meanings of the bar. It can refer to the veil between the living and the dead, between the actual and the mentally constructed, the legal fiction. It can stand for the actual railing that separates in a courtroom, that separates the gallery of the onlookers and the participants in the action. It can refer to the bar association itself. It can, when we talk about the bar, right? Well, it can talk about that British accreditation registry and who the members are. It can talk about the bar in the sense of the affiliates of the London Law Guild, because you have to realize that this all has a huge history going back to the 2nd century BC. And so when you're looking at that kind of scope of time, the London Law Guild and the Merry Men, the company, the theater company that came to England during the time of King Henry VIII to help administer the quid pro quo he established with the Pope. These people were all the inheritors of a tradition that went back another 700 years before that. And what had happened is that the priests of Sybil, a pagan goddess who was modeled on the Semiramis, who was the name of the goddess in Babylon, and then her name became Ashtoreth. The Hebrews called her Ashtoreth. It was the same goddess, the same idol, the same thing. Okay. And developed all these different names. Isis in Egypt, same goddess. And in Turkey and Asia Minor, she was called Sybil. And when Rome overran Asia Minor and the Levant, they brought back all of these slaves who were priests of Sybil. And the priests of Sybil wore these black robes, and they bleached their hair white.
Wow.
And they castrated themselves in honor of the goddess.
Oh, no.
Yes. And you'd think they'd die off, wouldn't you? But anyway.
Well, they didn't. I mean, doesn't nature handle this?
Anyway, they had all of these odd beliefs, and they were a little bit like Hasidic Jews in that they would go out and they would dance in the streets, and they would do all of these, weird rituals and things. Anyway, they came to Rome and they became the tax collectors for the Caesars.
Oh.
And, you still see remnants of this in the British court system. Why do they wear these white wigs and black robes? They were called the galley, Galli, the galley. And what you see there is the black robes and the white hair, the galley. That's what you've got going all the way back to the 2nd century BC. And it's all associated with this foreign goddess worship.
And piracy. Everything they're doing is actually piracy. You're talking about the booty.
Yeah, well, and here, consider this. Another name of the goddess is Columbia, as in District of Columbia.
Wow. What were you going to say, Cynthia?
I was going to say, while we're in the assembling phase, trying to get our courts up and our pillars up, and someone has a complaint, let's say someone shoves someone, and they want to be heard. We don't have a justice. We don't have our courts up and operational. Other than doing a mock trial and bringing something, if it's been through the assembly 2 or 3 times and they're not happy with the resolve, what do these assemblies do if they don't have a court and someone feels like there's no marks, there's no injury? How many witnesses are there? And then what do you do with someone in a shoving, or someone who recorded someone and they're upset, or someone did something? What is the repercussion for this? How do assemblies handle it? I yield.
Well, the standard procedure is just to give someone a timeout. I mean, say Joe and Fred get into a heated argument, and at some point, Joe just, shoves Fred's shoulder, and, there's this sort of very minor fisticuffs type thing. Well, then both of them might face a timeout, and the guy who did the shoving might be banned for 6 weeks, and the guy who was the victim might be banned for a week because they allowed themselves to get into such a heated debate that they lost their decorum. Okay, so you just kick them out for a period of time until they get the idea that, hey, this is not appropriate behavior for an assembly. And you apply that kind of justice by, just like when you're training a dog. I hate to put it in these terms, but one of the best ways that you can train an animal even is to separate yourself from the animal. And they want to be part of it, and they want to participate, and they want to be with you. And so they learn that if they want to participate and they want to be part of something, they have to behave themselves.
And even in the case where someone was recorded in a business meeting and they're upset that they were recorded, and it's been over and over and over and over. Now, if it doesn't end and you can't close the case, then timeout is appropriate, just because they're complaining they were recorded in a business meeting.
Well, people have all sorts of weird fears and activities, and the way to get rid of that sort of thing is just to say this meeting is being recorded.
What if we just say we're always recording, so just be aware?
Yeah, well, you can do that. Just make it obvious and clear. Okay, here are our standards. This is how we do business. We record our committee meetings so that if there's any question later on, we can refer back to the recording. If you got a problem with that, don't attend.
Even with a private phone call about business, it was recorded, then.
Because right now we're building everything and we're having one-on-one conversations with everybody. And so often we're recording them mainly because sometimes we're sharing them with some of the other folks so that everybody can be on the same page, because we couldn't have a meeting at the same time or, something of that nature. It's just a little efficient. Like, it's efficient for us to just record the conversation and say, hey, me and Cynthia talked about this. Here you go. You can just catch up with us,
Well, as long as you're making it clear, okay, I'm going to record this, then nobody has any cause to complain, right? They either participate or they don't. If they're not willing to go on the record, so to speak,
right,
then they don't have to. But if they don't, then you don't necessarily have to continue on in that vein either. I could see people being afraid of being captured on Memorex, but it kind of goes back to the same. The whole issue of the FBI and the CIA and all these agencies creeping around and surveillancing everybody. Okay, well, they do that. And, when all of this first began, I had all these people coming to me and saying, well, aren't you afraid of the CIA and the FBI and all these people? I said, let them stare up my skirt until they see Jesus. I don't give a rat's patootie what they are, they can watch me all day long and be bored. I don't care. I'm not doing anything that is even questionable. So, I'm not advocating any violence. I'm not advocating overthrow of any government. I'm building my own government. I'm restoring the government that we're supposed to have.
If someone's offended that they were recorded And it was about the business. It was about me, Marshall and Arms, and it was all about the big Marshall and Arms problem that you've seen, where somebody's telling someone what they're not or not going to do. Then it goes through 5 stages through the assembly and is not resolved. And he's upset that he was recorded. Well, simply don't make the phone call. Don't call.
Right. Well, if you don't want to be recorded, or you don't want to be on the record with something,
Don't.
just don't participate. Don't do it. Don't, and when you call someone, let them know, okay, well, we're going to record this so that I can share it with the other members of the committee. Or I'm going to, I'm recording this so that we have a record for our committee history, our archives. Whatever reason that you have for recording, it should be a good reason to record something. But just be upfront, say so, and then they have the option of either participating or not participating on that basis.
But we don't even have a law about this, right? Because we only have 2 laws, don't we, Anna?
Well, ultimately, yes. But I just want to point out, people get offers all the time. A court summons is an offer to contract.
Solicitation.
It's
solicitations.
It's a solicitation. We don't accept solicitations. We may return our compliments to the court and go, but we don't accept solicitations. We don't accept contracts. We don't offer contracts. We don't offer to contract back to them. Okay. And, people are presented these things like they're presented the standard contract for a mortgage, right?
Right.
They don't realize that they're free to read that mortgage and, strike through anything they don't like. It's an offer to contract. You can always alter any offer to contract however you want it and counter offer.
Except for these new electronic things. Isn't that lovely what they do? They're like, yeah, we want a digital contract. It's easier. It's
well, some of that is easier. Some of it is just convenience.
Sure.
Like when you are putting earnest money down on a house and you're dealing with a real estate agent, a realtor will send you these contracts, e-signed contracts. It's at that point, it's just so trivial and it's so straightforward that anybody should be able to read that and say yay or nay. And you can still cross it out. You can still use your little, virtual pen and cross out anything you don't like. So, people have more latitude as to what they will and will not accept than they imagine. And then they cast themselves into the role of being victims like this guy has done. He had the latitude, assuming that you told him that this was being recorded. He had the latitude not to participate.
Not disclose it. I did not disclose I was recording, nor did he disclose he had a witness either sitting there listening.
Okay, well, disclosure is something that should happen. You should disclose when you record, and they should disclose when they have witnesses.
Okay, I'm being corrected. Course correction.
Yep, got it good. Okay.
Well,
we're learning. That's what we just are here doing. That's the reason we're having this whole conversation. The reason we meet every single Tuesday is to learn.
Well, when it comes to disclosure, you have to ask yourself, is it necessary for this person to understand the terms of our engagement?
Right.
Is it something that I would want to know if it were me on the other end of this?
Right.
And is it fair? Is what we're doing, is it just? Strictly speaking, if it wasn't disclosed to him that he was being recorded, then that recording cannot be used in court, for example.
Right.
It does not stand as evidence because it was obtained in an improper way. You have to disclose. Just, like one of the primary things that is stabbing them in the back about the registration of all these American babies is that it was not disclosed. It was not explained to the mother which United States of America they were talking about. It was not disclosed to the mother what kind of ramifications this would have for their child. None of this stuff was disclosed. Well, they didn't disclose it because if they disclosed it, none of these mothers would have signed. And they were,
Anna, in that case, they were literally like stealing someone's identity. In this situation, this person was demanding an audience with the marshal at arms. So if you're demanding an audience with the marshal at arms, then you should just expect that this is a professional phone call. And you're demanding an audience with the marshal at arms, and it's probably going to be recorded because it's the marshal at arms. And also the marshal is recording not just because it's to protect themselves, but probably because it could be protecting you in whatever the situation is that they might need to protect you in.
Oh, well, hold on a minute. If he is the one who is demanding an audience with the marshal at arms,
yes,
the terms of the meeting are on him, not on her. So, if he wanted a private meeting with the marshal at arms to one-on-one discuss this issue,
yes,
then it was his responsibility to say that, I want this to be a completely private meeting, because otherwise he's addressing a public official, and she didn't do anything wrong. She, in that circumstance, could record without saying it, although it would be better always to let someone know that you're recording.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, well, see, I didn't know the rest of the story there. I thought this was something that Cynthia had initiated, but no. If
context matters.
Yeah, if he was the one who was initiating, then he had the responsibility for setting the field, shall we say. It was his responsibility to indicate that he wanted a private meeting,
which we don't do because we're running a business. I mean,
it's just like the court.
Not really a private conversation. I mean, if we want to have one, we will. But
look, it's just like the court. Okay, you have objections, right?
Okay.
You don't belong in their court, and you have objections, and you just want to cut through this bull and get right to it. So you request a private meeting with the judge in their chambers. Now, the lawyers do this behind our backs all the time. They go to the judge and they sit in chambers and they talk about it and they cut deals. And they basically determine everything that's going to happen in the court case before it happens. They even have their little hand signals. Have you ever watched a court proceeding? They have hand and head signals. They have all sorts of little, signals that pass between them and the judge because they're actually playing against you. It's like a baseball game, like the umpire goes or the umpire goes and all these just little signals go on.
Speedball.
Yeah. Right, exactly. But you can do the same thing. You can request a meeting with the judge in their chambers as a private meeting, and it's outside the court venue, and you can go and say, hey, look, I don't belong in your jurisdiction, and here's why. So I would like this dismissed. And chances are the judge is going to look at it, and if you have prepared yourself and know what you're talking about, he's going to go, yeah, you're right, you don't belong in this venue. Out of here. because he doesn't want to have to deal with somebody who really knows what they're talking about, because it's going to go public and then he's going to be liable for it. And the prosecuting attorney is going to be liable for it. And the court as a whole is going to lose money because you're going to attach their bid bond and their performance bond. And that prosecutor is going to have to pay it out of his pocket. He's going to be hurt. And the court as a whole is going to be hurt. Both their reputation and their ability to make money is going to be harmed if they spend time and effort and money pursuing somebody that doesn't belong in their court.
Wow.
So yeah, you can get a private meeting, but you have to ask for it. You have to ask for a private meeting in chambers. Well, this guy needed to ask for a private meeting with Cynthia as Marshal at Arms. And I'm sure she would have agreed, sure, fine. Let's talk about it. Let's try to resolve whatever the issue is. But it was up to him. It was his move to set the terms of the engagement.
All right. Well, we got a bunch of questions. Let's get started and see what's going on there. But if you guys are really paying attention, we just got a really good court lesson today. So thank you so much for that, Anna. And I'm sure we're going to be replaying this one a lot. Okay. Jay, no, I'm pretty sure you are not supposed to open an account with the Bank of Dean, right, Anna?
Actually, my understanding is the Bank of Dene is a bank that was set up by the Navajo tribe for the Navajo tribe. And if you are a Navajo, it might be a great option. I don't know enough about it specifically, but my understanding is that it's a Navajo tribal bank, and it might be something that if you're a Navajo would be advantageous.
Cool. Can an ASN check the foreign national box on electronic job application forms like the I-9 without consequences to their they're still contracting, right? I don't know.
I'm not familiar with the I-9. I'm not sure what kind of a job you're applying for. So, it might have consequences. I'm really not, I don't have enough information to answer.
Okay. How does the Atlantic Charter, I think that means charter, play into our American history?
Which Atlantic Charter?
Wow.
About 100 of them.
Wow. That's a good one. All right. Robert Hale, is there an alternative to exchanging Zim bonds at a redemption center?
Yes, there is. My gosh, this is just crazy. All these people have invested in Zim and Iraqi dinar and all these foreign currencies as a speculative investment on the assumption that when everything gets reset, they're going to make a big amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Basically. So it's a speculative investment. It's based on currency exchange rates. And this bunch of scalpers out of Reno have set up this whole scheme of the redemption centers and all the rest of it. And most of these redemption centers are on old military bases. Well, guess what else we found going on these old mothballed military bases? We found SimCorp running adrenochrome factories on these old mothballed military bases. And, I would be very, very concerned if I were you about going to any kind of old mothballed military installation and dealing with people I don't know who are supposedly running this so-called redemption center, because we've had instances where people have just flat out disappeared. And this is being operated out of Reno, Nevada, which is not exactly known for anything but a lot of gambling and prostitution and other things that have gone on in Nevada forever. So if I were you, I would not even consider going to a redemption center. I would do the normal thing that everybody else all over the world does and go to a bank in broad daylight. And I would just walk into any international bank. Now, we're set up with our global family bank situation where we can do redemptions. So we take in the currency, and then we do the exchange rate according to whatever the exchange rate is on that day. And we enter the credit or the depository amount, if it's in gold, according to the exchange rate. And there's nothing to it. There's no non-disclosure agreement, and there's no 80 or 90% of your money taken. The money that your investment is. These people, these redemption center things, it's just a huge scam. I mean, and it's an obvious scam. Think about it. You show up there with your money, which has a fixed exchange rate internationally. You are owed the face value of that exchange rate on that day, no matter what. If you were to take your Zim into to an international exchange office today, they would give you the exact amount that's worth on the market today. Well, why wouldn't they do the same thing when it's worth 10,000 times more? It doesn't matter to the bank. It's it's just amazing to me that people have been caught up in this huge scam and this redemption center nonsense. When the reset happens, you're 1,000 times safer and better and have much more money coming back at you just by going to a competent bank. And we have competent banks. So, just do the same thing and go to the bank and exchange your foreign currency for, whatever currency you want. Don't go to these sleazy backdoor, who the hell knows who's doing what and who's responsible. And just because it's on an old mothballed military base, hey, there have been things going on those old mothballed military bases that you wouldn't ever want to think about or see. So don't go to these dangerous places and sign contracts, non-disclosure contracts with these sleazebags. If you were doing anything wrong, it would be different, but you're not. You're just making an investment in a foreign currency. You don't need to sign non-disclosure agreements. You don't need to hand over your currency to these guys, and they'll maybe give you 10% back if they like your special project that you want to do. What kind of nonsense is that? If I've got a Deutschmark in my hand and I want to go to the local international airport and exchange it for British pounds because I'm going to England, then I just straight across the board, whatever that German mark will buy in British pounds, then that's what I get in British pounds. Yeah. And it's the same thing with the Zim and the Iraqi dinar and all the rest of these foreign currencies. They're just currencies. You wouldn't walk in and give somebody $100 and then they say, okay, well, you're going to have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And that non-disclosure agreement is going to hold me harmless and make you responsible if you ever say a word about this little transaction ever again. Okay. And so here's this non-disclosure agreement, which is to protect me, the criminal, right, that's taking your $100 and then giving you a dime back. How stupid is this? And then you're going to go way to hell out in some godforsaken part of the country as if you were playing at being 007, and you're going to walk through this armed compound, and you're going to go to this old abandoned military base, and you're going to sit down with these crooks, and you're going to sign this NDA, and they're going to take the 90% of your money. How stupid! How dangerous! These are crooks. They could kill you For God's sake, people, wake up. Don't do this. Don't even think about redemption centers. My fat, you know what? This is just an obvious scam, and it has been a scam from the get-go. Now, you may make some money on your Iraqi dinar and on your Zim and everything else. That's true. But do it the right way. Just go to a bank and exchange it.
Okay, Robert.
I'm sorry, you got me going. But, you know.
Anna's like, Anna, the bank's coming together, isn't it? You're fired up because the bank is coming together.
Well, and nobody should risk their lives and give away the value of their investment and sign non-disclosure agreements against their own interests so that they can't even pursue the crooks.
Right.
I mean, this is nuts. Nobody should do it. Nobody should even think about it.
You're still upset about the greenback thing. I know, Anna. Anna is like those darn greenbacks. You know, they don't do it, Robert. Don't do it. Okay. All right. The next question, Paula. On the firearms app, how do we answer country of citizenship? Well, I don't know that we're filling these out, right, Anna?
We're not citizens.
Yeah, we're not citizens. We don't do this, you guys. All right. Can you give examples of what a district and municipal assembly is? District would be your British territorial, and municipal would be your Catholic Church.
Yeah, basically, they both are centered in the District of Columbia. And technically, they're both district assemblies because they're both out of the District of Columbia. But it gets a little bit cumbersome to describe it as a municipal district assembly. But anyway, they're both foreign. And one is British and territorial, and that's more for the military. And the other is religious and theocratic, and that's more, if you're a real diehard Catholic, you're going to be more comfortable with the municipal district assembly because, you know, they'll do the prayers and all the rest of the stuff.
What separates America from Rome?
Well, we had and have a service agreement from the Roman, the successors to the Holy Roman Empire. Okay, when this all started, the very first contract that we had, called the Constitution of the United States, right, was one of the three constitutions, and one of the three subcontractors that operated under that constitution was the Holy Roman Empire. So what services were we contracting for from the Holy Roman Empire? Well, we were contracting for them to run our patent office, and to run our postal service, and to run the customs operations in the port facilities when we were having goods come over from Europe. Okay, there were just basically a few things that they were doing for us, but they were important things, and they were in areas where they already had a well-established hegemony that spanned the globe, like the postal service. You know, we could set up our own postal service, but then we wouldn't have connectivity to the rest of the globe unless we joined their postal union, right? So, you know, it made sense at the time when we were setting up the Constitution for the United States, which is their specific contract, that they would provide those services for us and we would pay them for it. And that's exactly what the Constitution is. It's a service contract. So we were attached to the Holy Roman Empire by that contract. And then when the Holy Roman Empire collapsed and dissolved in the early 1800s, I think it went out in 1809, something like that. I need to look it up. Anyway, the Holy Roman Empire collapsed, say 40, 50 years later. Then the contract went to a successor organization, and it has been kind of kicked on down the road to different organizations to administer that contract and provide those services ever since.
Nicole wants to know, what is the de jure style of writing that they should be using in their committees and pillar works? What is the de jure style of writing should we be using? Do you understand this question?
Well, okay. This is a little bit crazy, but there is a presumption that when you use a word processor or a typewriter, that it's not de jure, which in itself is a that in itself is kind of an odd term that we shouldn't be using, de jure and de facto. We don't really need to do that. We just need to talk in terms of our government, our American government versus their government, which is foreign. Okay. So, what is the American style of writing that we should be using? Okay. You should just be writing, your notes and memos, or recording your meetings, or you should, if you type it up, you should have a standing agreement within the assembly that this is no evidence of commercial dealings.
Bob wants to know, how do we get their bid bond or performance bond?
You ask for it.
Who do we ask?
The prosecutor.
Okay.
And if they don't have a bid bond or performance bond, then the very next thing out of your mouth is, well, then this case needs to be dismissed as being frivolous because they don't have a basis for their action. See, one of the weird things about their courts is that if you bring something in their court, you have to risk something. And in this case, the prosecutor has to be confident enough in his prosecution to bid on the value of the case, which is an amount that's set. And last time I checked, it was $25,000 for every misdemeanor and $1 million for every felony charge, because that's what they get paid, you see. And so when the prosecutor enters a case against you, he actually has to put up a bond to secure the case for himself, number one, so that he gets paid, right? And so then there's a performance bond also attached to the bid bond, in which he has to guarantee that he's going to get the conviction. He has to be certain enough that he's going to get a conviction, or he can be out $1 million. And he has to pay it.
Wow.
So you ask for the bid bond and the performance bond anytime that you're in admiralty. Now, most of the time you start out in a municipal court, and what they're doing is they're addressing this theoretical person that's in all capital letters. So if that's in all capital letters, if you're being addressed as a defendant and your name is appearing in all capital letters, that's a municipal court, and this doesn't apply, because that's a different kind of court practicing a different kind of law, a whole different thing. But in an admiralty court, then they have the bid bond and the performance bond and all the rest of that processing. And that's to keep the prosecutor honest. The prosecutor has to have skin in the game to, bring a charge against you. Now, if they don't actually post a bid bond and a performance bond on a case, that's grounds to throw it out. So if you're being addressed as a defendant in upper and lower case, that's an indication that you're being addressed by a admiralty court. And if it's an admiralty court, then they need to have a bid bond and a performance bond. The prosecutor has to have that posted. He has to have skin in the game. He has to take a risk in order to bring charges against you. And if he doesn't, then you can just move that it's a frivolous charge and have it dismissed.
Gotcha. Okay. Queen, so you don't lose your pension. I think this person is military, Anna, because they're saying that, and then they say, is healthcare through retired military benefits considered a federal benefit? Do you want to just speak on that a little bit?
No. Here's the deal. These things are operating as corporations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're really no different than GM or Raytheon or IBM or, you know, any of the big corporations that have multinational operations. And so, because they're a corporation and because they're operating as a corporation and you've been employed by them, uh, it's just like any other pension. It's just like any other benefit that you might get from working from by one of these corporations. And they can't really complain or claim any benefit of being a government. They can't say that this is welfare. They can't get around that fact because when they operate as a corporation, then they step down from any advantage of being a government, and they are in the same venue and they have the same responsibilities and the same legal um, limitations of any corporation. So no.
So she wants to know, like, can she ever serve as ASC because she'd be depending on that military health care?
No, that once you retire, you retire. Okay, just like you walk off the job, you've been working for Exxon in Saudi Arabia for 30 years and you retire. Okay, you can go anywhere in the wide world and they still owe you your retirement, your pension, and any benefit that's associated with it, right? You can come back home to America and have your check delivered to, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and nobody has anything to say about it. It's your retirement from their corporation, and they owe it to you. So you can go wherever you want, live under whatever law you like, and they have nothing to say about it. And as for us, we consider that a retirement. You are severed from having to do whatever they tell you to do. So you're no longer in a possible conflict of interest because, they can go up a rope because you have retired. And that's it. That's the lock and load point. You have now left their system and they still owe you services and they still owe you money. But they don't get to say where you receive it or how you receive it or anything about it.
Did you want them to file any kind of letter or whatever? They still have to do all the things that military has to do, right? Like to remove themselves.
Okay, here's what the rats are doing. When you sign up, they don't tell you, they don't give you full disclosure. When you sign up and go into the military, they do not tell you that you're leaving the jurisdiction of the states. Okay, and that you're entering a foreign federal jurisdiction. There's, lips are zipped. They don't tell you that you're losing your access to your constitutional rights and guarantees, right? They don't tell you that in exchange for a paycheck, you are losing your standing as a man or a woman and agreeing to be considered a mere human with human rights instead of being a man with natural and unalienable rights, right? Okay, so they don't tell you any of this stuff. That invalidates the contract. That contract is dead on arrival. The moment you sign it, it's void for non-disclosure. Okay, but you don't know that. And so then they just proceed under the assumption that the maxim of law that the Romans set, which was let him who will be deceived be deceived. Okay. Anyway, so all of this is based on non-disclosure and basically fraud. But anyway, you sign up with their corporation, And in exchange for your service during your tour of duty, which is what? Indentured servitude as a human instead of a man, okay? During your tour of duty, which is establishing the length of your service as an indentured servant, okay, then you are going to get this rate of pay and you're going to get this duty station or you're going to get this training or whatever the deal is, okay? And then when you retire, if you become a lifelong, say that you spend your 20 years or whatever it is in your particular instance, and you retire from the military, then it's exactly the same as if you had been working for Exxon overseas or you had been working for Raytheon in Palm Springs or wherever, however, your duty station doesn't matter. You're working for this giant corporation and you retired from it, okay? Now, when you come back home, whether you're actually coming from a foreign country or you're coming out of this foreign jurisdiction, you have to write to them. You have to write to the branch commander and say, as of the date of my discharge shown on the attached copy of my DD 214, I am returning to my birthright political status as a South Carolinian. Short and sweet, just that. Okay, so you keep a copy of that correspondence. You make sure it has a tracking number. You send it express mail or whatever to show that you actually sent it. And that's it. You've given them notice that you are returning out of federal jurisdiction and back to state jurisdiction. But they have no reason or right to say anything about that. They just have to be notified that you have done this and that you are not intending to stay in their foreign federal jurisdiction.
Got it. All right. Here's the last question, Anna. Last question. How important is lineage? Is a lineage? I have done mine. I just need to know how to seal it.
Well, you don't have to seal a lineage treaty. You just have to state the facts. The treaty is okay. Look at it this way. Your genealogy is already a public record. They have records going back several hundred years at least on all of us, so that they can look back and go, oh yeah, well, that's the daughter of, and that's the daughter of, and that's the daughter of, and that's the son of, and they can go all the way back as far as anybody should know or care. So, it's not like what we're doing is not already public knowledge and already sealed on the public record, because it is. Every little aspect of it is. So you don't need to seal it. All you need to do is bring it forward and say, this is me. This is my lineage, so that they can't mistake you for some other Anna Maria Reisinger, right? As if there were any likelihood of anybody with that name, right? But anyway, they can't equivocate, because not only are you claiming that you're a living, breathing man or woman, but you have the proof all the way back that, this is where I come from. Here's my provenance. This is called a provenance. With the British title system, you have a chain of title that shows who owned this property prior to you. Okay. Our provenance is our chain of title going all the way back, showing, where we come from. And if I say that I've, my relatives have been here since 1702 and were accounted in this census, and I can show, well, Joe married Jill, and then Felix married Maud, and then, and this is how I came to be here, and this is my provenance, they don't have anything to say about it.
Yep. Do you have anything to say about this? The Romans and the British mimic everything from the Morris.
Well, and the thing is that, as we discussed earlier, the Romans were brilliant at stealing ideas of other peoples.
Mm.
They stole a lot from the Greeks. They stole a lot from the Carthaginians. They stole a lot from the Celtic tribes.
Bless you.
Pardon me. Pardon me. But wherever and whoever they were interacting with,
Bless you again. Got to do one more.
they borrowed whatever they found that was of value and they adapted it to their use. So they were, consummate thieves of good ideas that they then embroidered and adapted for their specific benefit. So, whatever traditions or ideas or caste systems, I mean, they didn't come up with the British Romano caste system. The caste systems have their history in a completely different part of the world with different cultures. But they adapted the caste system that they encountered in, say, India or Tibet, and they brought it forward and used it in their own society.
Mm. Well, friends, we had a great episode today. There was a lot learned. Thank you so much, Anna. And we will be back here next Tuesday. So we hope you join us. And Anna, me and Michelle started doing a thing on Mondays where we are just, kind of helping people learn out in YouTube land, what it is that we're doing here with you, and in just kind of a plain, simple format, going through from the very beginning for a lot of folks. So when you get a chance, maybe you'll check it out.
Well, okay, there's some wonderful things happening. And I am right now writing a book for lawyers called Law Retraining. And when we're done with that, that's going to help us to retrain bar attorneys to function as counselors of law. And, all of you out there, spread the word. We've got literally tons of bar attorneys who are waking up and who are realizing, oh my God, what am I doing? Okay. And so a lot of these people need the education desperately. And I would ask you all to, make it available. Give it to lawyers that people that you've worked with, so that they have a choice and they aren't just being railroaded into doing evil things because they don't know any better and don't have any other choice.
Nice. This is wonderful. And, I really appreciate that you are coming up with solutions for everyone. If people really pay attention, you're not trying to just throw people away or in the wind. I mean, this is not what's happening here. So,
right.
we're not trying to expel everybody or anything. We want everyone to be involved. They just need to remember and know the truth of these ancient laws that you're talking about. Look at this. This person's sharing something I thought was interesting too, Anna. The original Carthaginian, I'm not saying that right, were the Romans, who were also the Tartarians, who were also the Moors.
Well, Romans went everywhere. Let's face it. The Greeks and the Romans both just, they went everywhere. And, the echo of their civilization is still resounding down through the many centuries. What do? You still study Socrates and Plato. These guys have been dead for thousands of years. Come on. Homer.
Yeah.
So it's natural that there's going to be this kind of interaction and learning from other civilizations. But we have the responsibility of picking and choosing of what's good. Okay. We have the ability to logically evaluate whether something from the past deserves to be brought forward. And there are certain things like caste systems that denigrate people that we should really question, that we should really object to. I mean, the reality, the truth, and the fact is that wherever you look, humans don't exist. Subhumans, this label, subhumans don't exist. All that we've got here are men and women who are being denigrated as mere humans or as subhumans by an arbitrary system of organization that's thousands of years old and has always been evil. So instead of just following along like little ducklings and doing as the mother duck did, maybe it's time that we step back from this system and said, no, we're not doing this anymore. It's not a good system. Yeah, sure, it organizationally it works, but is that the only way that we can function? No, it's not. We don't have to denigrate each other in order to get work done. Okay? We can have work agreements that are, openly disclosed stipulations of, here's the work to be done. Are you willing to do it? We don't have to denigrate each other, because when we denigrate each other, we're denigrating ourselves. It's like I often say, slavery would not exist if we did not allow slavery.
That's right. I was just going to say that when you said it. I was thinking about when you told us that, and I was just thinking about it, and then you said it again.
Right. When you allow slavery to exist for someone else, you also potentially open up the possibility that you're going to be enslaved. So the wise thing to do is just to say, no slavery. And then we don't have to worry about it. No denigration of people as things. End of story. No denigration of people as mere humans. No propensity or perpetration of different kinds of rights that pertain to only this particular little group. Okay. So you see, you've got this hierarchy of the natural and unalienable rights that you have as a living man or woman, and then they denigrate those down to human rights, which you've heard a great deal about, right? And then they denigrate it again down to civil rights, which aren't really rights at all. They're privileges that are granted by the masters, okay? And they can be taken away with the stroke of a pen. That just happened, in September 2 years ago. Donald Trump took out his mighty pen as the commander-in-chief of a British territorial corporation. Woohoo! And he said, no more civil rights. So if you've been wondering why we had all this unrest in 2020 and all these people out in the streets and all this looting and vandalism and arson going on, it was because Donald Trump took away the equal civil rights that people had fought so hard for in 1968.
It's the words, Anna. It's like, we keep saying words matter. Words matter. Everybody needs to pay attention to the words. And I think we'll close on that, Anna, and we will just see everybody next Tuesday.
Yes, ma'am. I will see you all, God willing. Take care, guys.